Dear brothers and sisters, peace in the Lord. Today we continue our journey through the life of Abraham, a journey of faith, surrender, and deep trust in God. And in today's chapter, we walk into one of the most soul-stirring moments in all of Scripture. It's the moment when Abraham faced a command that seemed to contradict everything God had promised him. A moment when obedience and heartbreak collided, a moment when faith was tested to its very limit. This is chapter 21, titled The Greatest Trial of All, from the book Abraham, or The Obedience of Faith. Let us walk together into this sacred scene. It begins with a simple but piercing command. From Genesis chapter 22, verse 2, God said, "Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and offer him for a burnt offering." This was not just any child. This was the miracle child, Isaac, the one Abraham had waited for his whole life. The son who carried the promise of descendants as numerous as the stars, the one in whom Abraham's hope was planted. And now, God asked for him back. But notice something. The scripture doesn't say God tempted Abraham, but rather, God tested him. There is a deep difference. Temptation comes from the enemy, designed to make us fall. Testing comes from God, designed to refine us, to draw out the faith and grace He has already placed within us. God wasn't trying to break Abraham, He was showing the world what surrendered love looks like. Often the trials that shape us most don't come with thunder or warning. Sometimes they arrive silently, through ordinary days. Abraham was at peace. He was rejoicing in Isaac. He was settled in Beersheba. Life had finally become stable. But at that very moment, the greatest test came without warning. And it struck not just hard, but deep. God asked for Isaac, whom thou lovest. Abraham had already given up many things, his homeland, his comforts, even Ishmael. But this was the final thread. Now picture this. The command likely came at night. There was no time for emotional preparation, no moment to process. And yet, Genesis chapter 22, verse 3 simply says, "And Abraham rose up early in the morning." No delay, no complaint, just immediate personal obedience. He saddled the donkey himself. He chopped the wood with his own hands. He told no one, not even Sarah. There are moments in our lives where the journey of obedience must be walked alone, in silence. And this was one of them. For 3 days Abraham walked, 3 long silent days. We can barely imagine the weight in his heart. What do you say to your son when you're carrying wood meant for his sacrifice? How do you keep walking, knowing what the altar will require? And then, on the 3rd day, he saw the mountain, the one God had chosen. He turned to his servants and said something astonishing in Genesis chapter 22, verse 5. "I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you." Did you hear that? We will come again to you. That wasn't denial, that was faith. Abraham believed not that God would change his mind, but that God could raise Isaac from the dead. As Hebrews chapter 11 verse 19 says, accounting that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead. Faith doesn't always understand, but it always trusts. As they climbed the mountain, Isaac asked the question that must have pierced Abraham's soul. From Genesis chapter 22 verse 7, "My father, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" And Abraham answered, "My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering." Genesis chapter 22, verse 8. A reply full of mystery, faith, and prophecy. So they went, both of them together. That phrase is repeated, and it's no accident. It speaks of unity, of shared obedience, even when the full picture wasn't clear. Now comes the part Scripture barely speaks, but we feel deeply. Abraham built the altar. He laid the wood in order. And then he told Isaac. We don't know the words. The Bible draws a veil over that sacred moment. But Isaac did not resist. He could have run. He could have fought. But he laid himself on the altar, just as Jesus, centuries later, would carry his own cross and lay down his life willingly. Then came the moment that stopped heaven. Abraham lifted the knife. His hand was steady. And just before it fell, God's voice thundered from heaven, Abraham, Abraham, in Genesis chapter 22, verse 11, lay not thine hand upon the lad, for now I know that thou fearest God. Genesis chapter 22, verse 12. The test was over. The obedience was complete. And then Abraham lifted his eyes and saw a ram caught in the thicket. He offered it in the stead of his son. A picture of substitution, a glimpse of Calvary, where another son would not be spared. Abraham called that place Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. Genesis chapter 22, verse 14 says, In the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. God's provision is often hidden until the very last moment. It appears when the knife is raised, when the altar is ready, when the heart is fully surrendered. Dear friends, we may never face a test quite like Abraham's, but we will face our own, times when faith seems to contradict reason, when obedience feels impossible, when the promise of God looks like it's slipping away. In those moments, may we say like Abraham, Here am I, and may we trust that God is able. The angel of the Lord spoke again, this time not just with a word, but with an oath. In Genesis chapter 22, verses 16 to 18, God said, Because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, in blessing I will bless thee, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. This was the high point, the moment where obedience met promise and heaven gave its loudest yes. This is not just Abraham's story. It's the story of every soul who walks the path of surrender. The altar you build may not be on Mount Moriah, but it is just as real. And the God who met Abraham there will meet you too. Step forward in faith. Lay down what you treasure most and wait for the voice of mercy to call your name. Thank you for joining us today as we read this unforgettable chapter, chapter 21, the greatest trial of all, from the book Abraham, or The Obedience of Faith by F.B. Meyer. If this chapter has stirred your heart, we warmly invite you to read along with us, one chapter a day, discovering timeless truths from Abraham's journey of faith. Leave us a comment and let us know. Has God ever asked you to surrender something dear to you? What did you learn in that season? And don't forget, subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next chapter in this beautiful journey. We'll see you next time. Until then, may your faith stay strong, your heart stay open, and your trust be rooted in the one who always provides.